Hello, chapter 16 of Delirium. Unhappiness is bondage, therefore happiness is freedom. The way to find happiness is through the cure. Therefore it is only through the cure that one finds freedom. From Will It Hurt? Common Questions and Answers About the Procedure, 9th edition. After that, I find a way to see Alex almost every day, even on the days I have to work at the store. Sometimes Hannah comes along with us. We spend a lot of time at Back Cove, mostly in the evenings after everyone has left. Since Alex is on the books as cured, it's not technically illegal for us to spend time together. But if anyone knew how much time we spent together, or saw us laughing and dunking and having water fights or racing down by the marshes, they'd definitely get suspicious. So when we walk through the city, we're careful to stand apart, Hannah and I on one side and Alex on the other. Plus, we look for the emptiest streets, the rundown parks, the abandoned houses, places where we won't be seen. We return to the houses in Delirium Highlands. I finally understand how Alex knew how to find the tool shed during the raid night, and how he navigated the halls so perfectly in pitch dark. For years he has spent a few nights a month squatting in the abandoned houses. He likes to take a break from the noise and the bustle of Portland. He doesn't say so, but I know squatting must remind him of the wilds. One house in particular becomes our favorite, 37 Brook Street, an old colonial that used to be home to a family of sympathizers. Like many of the other houses in Delirium Highlands, the property has been boarded up and fenced off ever since the Great Rout that emptied the area. But Alex shows us a way to sneak in through the loosened plank covering one of the first floor windows. It's strange. Even though the place has been looted, some of the bigger furniture and the books are still there. And if it weren't for the smoke stains creeping up the walls and ceilings, you might expect the owners to come home any moment. The first time we go, Hannah walks ahead of us calling, "Hello! Hello!" into the darkened rooms. I shiver in the sudden dark and coolness. After the blinding sunshine outside, it comes as a shock. Alex pulls me closer to him. I'm finally getting used to letting him touch me, and I don't flinch or whip around to look over to my shoulder every time he leans in for a kiss. "Want to dance?" he teases. "Come on," I slap him away. It's weird to talk loudly in such a quiet place. Hannah's voice rolls back to us, sounding distant, and I wonder how big the house is, how many rooms there are, all covered in the same thick layer of dust, all draped in shadow. "I'm serious," he says. He spreads his arms. "It's the perfect place for it." We're standing in the middle of what must once have been a beautiful living room. It's enormous, bigger than the whole ground floor of Carol and William's house. The ceiling stretches up into darkness, and a gigantic chandelier hangs above us, winking dully in the limited shafts of light that sneaks through the boarded-up windows. If you listen hard, you can hear mice moving quietly in the walls, but somehow it's not gross or frightening. Somehow it's kind of nice, and it makes me think of woods and endless cycles of growth and death and regrowth. Like what we're really hearing is the house folding down around us, centimeter by centimeter. "There's no music," I say. He shrugs, winks, holds out his hand. "Music is overrated," he says. I let him draw me toward him, so we're standing chest to chest. He's so much taller than I am. My head barely reaches his shoulder, and I can feel his heart drumming through his chest, and it gives us all the rhythm we need. The best part of 37 Brooks is the garden in the back. An enormous overgrown lawn winds between ancient trees, so thick and gnarled and knotted their arms twist overhead and form a canopy. The sunlight filters through the trees and spots the grass a pale white. The whole garden feels as cool and quiet as the library at school. Alex brings a blanket and leaves it inside the house. Whenever we come, we take it and shake it out on the grass, and all three of us lie there, sometimes for hours, talking and laughing about nothing in particular. Sometimes Hannah or Alex buy some food for a picnic, and one time I managed to swipe 3 cans of soda and a whole carton of candy bars from my uncle's store, and we get totally crazy on a sugar high and play games like we did when we were little, hide and seek and tag and leapfrog. Some of the tree trunks are as wide as 4 garbage pails mashed together, and I take a picture of Hannah laughing, trying to fit her arms around one of them. Alex says the trees must have been here for hundreds of years, which makes Hannah and me go silent. That means they were here before the borders were shut down, before the walls were put up, before the disease was driven into the wilds. When he says it, something aches in my throat. I wish I could have known what it was like then. Most of the time, though, Alex and I spend time alone, and Hannah covers for us. After weeks and weeks of not seeing her at all, suddenly I'm going to Hannah's every single day, and sometimes twice in one day, when I see Alex, and then when I actually see Hannah. Fortunately, my aunt doesn't pry. I think she assumes we had a fight and we are making up for lost time now, which is kind of true anyway, and it suits me fine. I'm happier than I can ever remember being. I'm happier than I can ever remember even dreaming of being. And when I tell Hannah I can never in a million years repay her for covering for me, she just crooks her mouth into a smile and says, "You've already repaid me." I'm not sure what she means by that, but I'm just glad to have her back on my side. When Alex and I are alone, we don't do much. We just sit and talk, but still, time seems to shrivel away, fast as paper catching on fire. One minute it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The next minute, I swear, the light is draining from the sky and it's almost curfew. Alex tells me stories about his life, about his aunt and uncle, and some of the work they do, although he's still pretty vague about what the sympathizers and the invalids are aiming for and how they're working to achieve it. That's okay. I'm not sure I want to know. When he mentions the need for resistance, there is a tightness to his voice, an anger coiling underneath his words. At those times, and only for a few seconds, I'm still afraid of him, still hear the word invalid drumming in my ear. But mostly Alex tells me normal stuff about his aunt's Frito pie and how, whenever they get together, his uncle gets a little too tipsy and tells the same stories about the past over and over. They're both cured. And when I ask him whether they aren't happier now, he shrugs and says, they miss the pain too. This seems incredible to me. And he looks at me out of the corner of his eye and says, that's when you really lose people you know, when the pain passes. Mostly, though, he talks about the wilds and the people who live there, and I lay my head on his chest and close my eyes and dream of it. Of a woman everyone calls Crazy Caitlin, who makes enormous wind chimes out of scrap metal and crushed soda cans. Of Grandpa Jones, who must be at least 90 but still hikes through the woods every day, foraging for berries and wild animals to eat. Of campfires outside and sleeping under the stars and staying up late to sing and talk and eat, while the sky goes smudgy with smoke. I know that he still goes back there sometimes, and I know he still considers it his real home. He nearly says as much when I tell him one time that I'm sorry I can't go home with him to check out his studio on 4th Street, where he has lived since starting at the university. If any of his neighbors saw me going into the building with him, we'd be finished. But he corrects me really quickly. That's not home. He admits that he and the other invalids have found a way to get in and out of the wilds, but when I press him for details, he clams up. Someday maybe you'll see, is all he says, and I'm equal parts terrified and thrilled. I ask him about my uncle who escaped before he could stand trial, and Alex frowns and shakes his head. Hardly anybody goes by a real name in the wilds, he said, shrugging. He doesn't sound familiar, though. But he explains that there are thousands and thousands of settlements all around the country. My uncle could have gone anywhere, north or south or east or west. We know he didn't go east. He would have ended up in the ocean. Alex tells me that there are at least as many square miles of wilderness in the USA as there are recognized cities. This is so incredible for me that for a while I can't even believe it. And when I tell Hannah, she can't believe it either. Alex is a good listener too, and can stay silent for hours while I tell him about growing up in Carol's house, and how everybody thinks Grace can't speak, and only I know the truth. He laughs out loud when I describe Jenny, and her pinched look, and old lady face, and habit of looking down her nose at me like I'm the 9-year-old. I feel comfortable talking about my mother with him too. and how it used to be when she was alive. And it was just the three of us, me, her, and Rachel. I tell him about the sock hops and the way my mom used to sing us lullabies, even though I can only remember a few snatches of the song. Maybe it's the way he listens so quietly and stares at me steadily with his eyes bright and warm and never judges me. One time I even tell him about the last thing my mom ever said to me, and he just sits and rubs my back when I suddenly feel like I'm about to cry. The feeling passes. The warmth of his hand draws it out of me. And, of course, we kiss. We kiss so much that when we're not kissing, it feels weird. Like I get used to breathing through his lips and into his mouth. Slowly, as we get more comfortable, I start to explore other parts of his body too. The delicate structure of his ribs under his skin, his chest and shoulders like chiseled stone, the soft curls of pale skin on his legs, and the way his skin always smells a little bit like the ocean, all beautiful and strange. Even crazier is that I let him look at me too, which I'll only let him pull my shirt aside and kiss my collarbone and shoulders. Then I let him draw my whole shirt over my head and lie me down in the bright sunshine and just stare at me. The first time I'm shaking. I keep having the urge to cross my hands over my chest, to cover up my breast, to hide. I'm suddenly aware of how pale I look in the sunshine and how many moles I have spotting up and down my chest. And I just know he's looking at me. I'm wrong or deformed. But then he breathes beautiful. And when his eyes meet mine, I know that he really, truly means it. That night, for the first time in my life, I stand in front of the bathroom mirror and I don't see an in-between girl. For the first time, with my hair swept back and my nightgown slipping off one shoulder and my eyes glowing, I believe what Alex said. I am beautiful. But it's not just me. Everything looks beautiful. The book of Shh says that deliria alters your perception, disables your ability to reason clearly, impairs you from making sound judgment. But it does not tell you this, that love will turn the whole world into something greater than itself. Even the dump, shimmering in the heat, an enormous amount of scrap metal and melting plastic and stinking things, seems strange and miraculous, like some alien world transported to Earth. In the morning light, the seagulls perched on the roof of City Hall look like they've been coated in the thick white paint. As they light up against the pale blue sky, I think I've never seen anything so sharp and clear and pretty in my life. Rainstorms are incredible. Falling shards of glass, the air full of diamonds. The wind whispers Alex's name and the ocean repeats it. The swaying trees make me think of dancing. Everything I see and touch reminds me of him. And so everything I see and touch is perfect. The book of Shh also doesn't mention the way that time will start to run away from you. Time jumps. It leaps. It pours away like water through fingers. Every time I come down to the kitchen and see that the calendar is flipped forward yet another day, I refuse to believe it. A sick feeling grows in my stomach, a leaden sensation that gets heavier every day. 33 days until the procedure, 32 days, 30 days. And in between, snapshots, moments, mere seconds. Alex smearing chocolate ice cream on my nose after I've complained I'm too hot. The heavy drone of bees circling above us in the garden. A neat line of ants marching quietly over the remains of our picnic. Alex's finger in my hair. The curve of his elbow under my head. Alex whispering, I wish you could stay with me. While another day bleeds out on the horizon, red and pink and gold, staring up at us, inventing shapes for the clouds. A turtle wearing a hat, a mole carrying a zucchini, a goldfish chasing a rabbit